Hey crafty fam, it's Alex Vanover and welcome back to my craft room. If you are new here for the first time, then welcome. I am so excited that you're here. In this video, I'm gonna show you how to make a super cute cake topper using chipboard and your Cricut Maker. So let's jump into it. So first you're gonna begin your chipboard project with either creating your own design using your own images and fonts or using a pre-made SVG. So I'm gonna go into my recent uploads and grab an SVG that I'm gonna use for mine because I really love this file, and I will link it for you guys if you're interested in using the same one in the description below. So even though I really love this file, I just want to give you guys some advice, and I would not recommend that you make your lines any finer than the ones that you see on this design, whether that's lines in your design or even fonts. The thing about projects like this is that chipboard is a big, heavy, dense material, and that requires the Cricut Maker and the knife blade. But the thing about the knife blade is that it's a pretty big and bulky blade, so it really just can't handle super fine details, and it's just gonna shred up your chipboard. So make sure that you're keeping that in mind when you choose your project. You may have to make some modifications after the first try, so just be prepared for that. But once you get your file finished, or once it's ready in Design Space, next you can size it according to the top tier of your cake. So I'm personally gonna make this one about 8 inches wide, just to make sure that it's a pretty good size, but it's not too massive. And then once your design is finalized and sized, next you need to duplicate it 2 times. And the reason for this is because the way that I'm gonna decorate this chipboard is I'm gonna be gluing cardstock to the front and back side of it in order to cover up the chipboard color. So you have a few other options as well, but I just think this is the easiest, best way to do it. And I'm gonna be using glitter cardstock, so that's only one-sided, which is why I need to have 2 copies of it, and then one of these needs to be mirrored. So in order to cut it on the same mat, I'm gonna choose one of these designs that's gonna be the cardstock design, and I'm gonna go to flip and then flip horizontal, so that way it can fit on the back side. Then I'm gonna click and hold down the shift key and click the other cardstock design, and then I'm gonna change the color. And this is just so that it cuts on a different mat than our actual chipboard. So once you have your chipboard design and both your cardstock designs ready, next you can click Make It. And then you just want to ensure that you've got your designs, your cardstock designs on a different mat from your chipboard cut. And I'm also going to change my paper setting here to 8.5 by 11 because that's the size of my cardstock. And then we are ready to hit continue and move on to the materials selection screen. And once your machine connects, next you need to choose your cut setting. So we're going to go into Browse All Materials and choose Chipboard. And as you can see when I search, there are several different thicknesses of chipboard. So make sure that you choose the correct one for the one that you are cutting. I personally am going to be using the Cricut brand 1.5mm chipboard, and I recommend that you do stick with Cricut brand. And the reason for that is because chipboard comes in a lot of different thicknesses, and you want to make sure that you get a chipboard that your machine can handle and it's not going to damage anything. So that's why I recommend sticking with the Cricut brand and making it really easy. So after you have your cut setting selected, you can click Done. And then it's going to instruct you to put the knife blade in. So I'll show you guys what you need to do to prep your mat before we get started here in just a second. But I also wanted to say that after this is finished cutting, I'm going to cut these cardstock cuts on glitter cardstock because that's the type of cardstock I'm using. But if you're using something else, or if you're not using any paper at all, just adjust your cut setting before you continue. So let's head on over to my craft table and I'll show you guys how to set up your mat and cut your chipboard. First, you need to insert your knife blade into your Cricut Maker. Begin by opening clamp B and removing the fine point blade. Then remove the cap from the knife blade, but be very careful. It's very sharp. First, you need to insert your knife blade into your Cricut Maker. Begin by opening clamp B and removing the fine point blade. Then remove the cap from your knife blade, but be very careful, it's super sharp. Position the knife blade so that the open part of the gears without the plastic cover is facing the machine, while the plastic covered part of the gear is facing you. Put the knife blade in clamp B and then close the clamp. Keep the cap off to the side so that you don't lose it. And then make sure to move your little white star wheels all the way to the right side so it doesn't create any dents in your chipboard. Next, it's time to prepare your mat. Make sure you're using the purple strong grip mat. It needs to be super sticky, so I'm gonna flip my mat over and use the bottom side. But make sure that you're positioning the chipboard in the upper left-hand corner of the mat, no matter what side you're using. I used a brayer to roll all over my chipboard to make sure that the chipboard is really well stuck to the mat. But running your hands all over the chipboard will do the trick as well. Next, the chipboard needs to be secured on all 4 sides of the mat using masking tape. Don't worry about the tape overlapping with the chipboard. The knife blade will cut right through it. Once all 4 sides of the chipboard are secure, you can insert your mat into the machine and let your machine work its magic. The way that the knife blade works is it takes lots of passes, like 10 to 20 depending on your design. My design took around an hour to cut, and it may take even longer if your design is super intricate. Though you don't need to necessarily stand over it and watch, this is not a project that you can leave while it cuts. If the knife blade gets stuck or a piece of the chipboard starts pulling up, then you'll need to pull it out before it tangles up in the blade. So sit tight and be prepared for a long wait. You most likely won't use all the passes the Cricut says it will take. When you're in the last few passes, you'll want to start checking your chipboard to see if it's finished cutting. I'll show you how to check when the chipboard is finished when mine gets closer to being done. When you start to get to the last few passes, you'll need to start checking to see if your cut is finished. Otherwise, your machine may cut all the way through your mat. You can check it by pressing the pause button on your machine and pressing around the cut lines to see if the cut pops out of the rest of the sheet. Of the 12 passes my machine said it needed for this project, I started watching it closely around pass number 9. The design isn't popping out much in this clip, so it's not ready to unload just yet. If you walk away from the Cricut and let it do all the passes, it will probably cut all the way through your mat. That's why you need to be semi-active with the cut and paying attention toward the end. Once I felt the cut really popping out of the sheet on 11 of my 12 passes, I pressed the pause button and then unloaded my mat. Here's what my final cut looks like. Next, it's time to gently remove all the masking tape from your mat. Then to remove the cut from the mat, flip the mat over and peel the whole sheet off carefully. I'm not sure how well you can tell, but the knife blade cut into my mat after only 11 of my 12 passes. That's why it's so important to pay close attention to your cuts. Next, you can begin removing the chipboard cut from the whole sheet. Do it carefully because you'd be surprised at how fragile chipboard cuts really are. If you have any areas that aren't 100% cut through, especially in the middle of your letters, if you have any areas that aren't 100% cut through, you can use an X-Acto knife to carefully cut through any layers of the chipboard that are still remaining. Before cutting the glitter cardstock, remove the knife blade and put the cap back on it. Then insert the fine point blade back into your machine. Adjust your cut setting to glitter cardstock or whatever cut setting you need to use, and cut out the paper that you're going to use to decorate your cake topper. And don't forget to move your little white star wheels back out onto the bar on your Cricut Maker. The star wheels really help the machine grip the material, so don't forget to move those back in place. Using cardstock is not your only option for decorating your cake topper. You can also paint or spray paint the cake topper instead. The only thing I would be careful about painting your cake topper is if the file that you're using has the stick part of the cake topper already attached to the file, then you don't want to get any chemicals from paint or spray paint onto the sticks that you're going to be inserting into the cake. That's why I prefer to attach the sticks myself at the end. But you can also choose to tape off the bottom part of the sticks if you prefer to paint your cake topper rather than using cardstock. When decorating cake toppers with cardstock, I recommend you paint the edges first so that the brown color of the chipboard doesn't show. I'm gonna skip that step since this is just a tutorial, but that's something to keep in mind. I use tacky glue and I spread a small amount on all the thicker areas of the cake topper. Then I just lined up the cardstock with that side of the cake topper and pressed down on each area of the cake topper that had glue on top of it. Make sure when you get everything in place that you allow the cardstock to dry before flipping it over and doing the back side. On the back side, I repeated the same gluing process, except I ended up outlining all of my letters so that every part of the cake topper had glue on it. This ended up working a lot better, so learn from my mistake and add a little bit of glue all over the cake topper. I also wouldn't recommend using hot glue for this part because it dries a little bit too fast. Then once you have glue all over the topper, press paper into the topper and allow the glue to dry before adding the sticks. Keep in mind that you may need more than one stick to support the weight of your cake topper. As you can see, this one is thin, so it's pretty unstable. That's why I chose to use 2 candy sticks. Make sure that you put the candy sticks through the areas that are going to support your design, which is why I chose to have one going through the middle and one off to the side. Add hot glue to all the areas that you want the stick to pass through. Then push your stick into the glue and allow it to set. Once the glue is set, then you're all done. If you're not already a member of one of my Facebook groups, I would love to have you join my little crafty fam. So you can find the links to both of my groups down in the description below, and I really hope that you'll join us. And if you decide to make anything using my tutorials, whether it's a cake topper or something else, and you share it out on Instagram, please use the hashtag DIYAlex because I love seeing what you guys are crafting and learning about. And if you've made it this far in the video, then I really want to get to know you on social media. So be sure to find me at DIYAlex Vanover on pretty much all major social media platforms. I'll also put direct links to my profiles down in the description below. If you enjoyed this video and you want to see more just like it, then be sure to subscribe to the DIY Alex YouTube channel and be sure to ring the bell so that you get notified every single time that I put out a new video every single week. But don't wait for next week's video. Be sure to check out this one next. Or if you want to make your DIY dreams come true, be sure to check out this video. I know that you're going to love it.